Good morning. I'm Cecelia Sterling. I'm here to share a story and to sort of bring you into where I am. This is my first recording. I'm feeling nervous, excited. I feel enthusiastic, which to me is a grounded version of excitement. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and there have been 1 billion steps to get me to this place, most of which I was unconscious of the fact that this is where they were leading. And now I'm starting to notice how a lot of them brought me here, and I'm just feeling sort of blessed, and I'm on my path, happy to share it with you. There's a quote, and I'm curious if it's a Tolkien quote. I'll be referencing Tolkien in the story too. But it's in that new show that's on Prime about the Rings of Power. And it's a conversation with Gandalf's character and, what's her sweet name? That incredible female lives among the earth. She's like an early hobbit. Starts with an N. They're having a conversation. They say something about life being a journey, but to become an adventure, it must be shared. I'm really interested in the power of personal stories coming from the place of I statements, the power of just holding space and exploring my own story. And now I'm excited to share it, because I think there's something really important there too. It's like a nod to the oral history gurus and our ancestors in that way. Anyway, that feels like kind of a lot of blah, blah, blah. You'll get a lot of blah, blah, blah from me. We're trying to decide if I should wear my glasses or not. Please feel free to vote. I think I'm going without to start, and if I have to get smart on myself, I'm going to add the glasses. Or maybe just like wave them around to make a good point. Thank you for joining me. My little one is off to school. I'm in my room of my own. Thank you, Virginia Woolf. We'll talk about that another day. And I've started writing. Now, I am someone who talks to healers, intuitives. I get my tarot cards read. I like reflection that feels a little more omniscient, if you will. And I spoke to an intuitive a few months ago, and she told me, interestingly, that I would start writing in November. As the intuitive said, I have started writing in the month of November, interestingly. And as I started writing, I received something in the mail a few days later. And it's one of those like promo packages where a company sends you what you could purchase as merch. So it was a pen. And it said Super Chick on it. Interestingly, I'm about to start writing. I started writing. I received this pen. Super Chick is written on it. A nickname of mine from when I moved from University of Michigan to Southern California. And it's a great t-shirt I found in this vintage shop in LA on Melrose. It's so fantastic. My cousin, who's a Brazilian girl, is amazing, says to me, I never want to see you without that t-shirt on. And I would say most people rarely saw me for the next 2 years without that t-shirt on. It was definitely my uniform for that phase. And I started thinking about writing a book that was The Adventures of Super Chick. And somehow, 1 billion steps ago, I started down a path. And here I am, sharing some of my adventures. So I started writing. As predicted, I receive a pen that says Super Chick on it. I opened my first notebook to start the writing process. I'm excited to use my pen because I'm going to actually work on one of my stories. And I find a check in my notebook. And I just thought, I'm going to get paid to write. Yeah, into this. I've been praying for this type of setup for a long time. Here we are. So thank you for being here with me. So as I start the writing process, I notice that I'm wanting to care a little more about these stories. whether it's investigation or just allowing them the time and space to develop. And after my writing session that particular day, I do a meditation. And I'm doing the meditation instead of cleaning my house. And I'm tired. And I just allow myself to lay. And in the meditation, I feel that I am in sort of a new place because they prompt me to set an intention. And I do. And I have a clear intention. I'm not intending to intend. I'm not asking for someone else to reflect back to me what my intention might be. I'm very clear about the work I want to do, how I'd like to be paid, and the experience I'd like to have around that work. And here we are. I'm grateful. I'm scared and nervous also. I'm really grateful. And I'm proud of myself, and I'm really in this reflective space of noticing how many bazillions of steps it took to get just to here, and fully understand that I'm just in the middle of something, and I'll know more about that later. But I'm happy to be here now. Okay, so this be here now is sort of the whole reason for this story. I don't know, maybe a year ago, a old college roommate of mine reached out to me and said, I'm curious how you've gotten to where you are. I had been sharing stories on Instagram while I tried to sell stuff in my boutique during COVID. I sort of started doing videos online in a new way because of COVID. But I started referencing a lot of personal information, sort of a precursor to this. And she reaches out and I say, it's a really good question. And how are you? And she says, I'm fine on some level, and my family is well, and where everything's okay. But when people ask me how I am, I don't know how to answer. And I was like, I know exactly how that feels. That's exactly the thought process I used to have. And literally, I would almost practice in the morning. Like, people are going to ask me how I am today. How am I going to answer that question? And I don't feel that way anymore. I've grown in a lot of ways and done a lot of work that I think may have healed that being a trigger point. But I want to share some of those steps with you, almost as like an origin story for my show, and as sort of an example of why I think these stories are important and what I've noticed along the way, as far as the tools showing up for me that I need almost just before or just as I need them, and how that sort of helped me build trust in myself and in others. So this story begins back in 2011, and a bit before that, and I'm not even sure the exact year before that, but the sort of phase before the 2011 event, which I will share with you in a minute, is I am introduced to Louise Hay. And through Louise Hay, I start listening to her affirmation meditations before going to sleep. I was having trouble sleeping. I sort of realized that I'm an auditory learner, that sound is very soothing to me. And I have this sort of new inner grandmother, elder, if you will, who is giving me some new language and a new feeling for my internal conversation. It's becoming more kind, more loving, which helps me build more trust and confidence, as I mentioned, and starts describing the world as safe. I grew up with a tremendous amount of fear. Tremendous. As a little kid, I had these inner stories that van down there was just before cell phones, definitely communicating with the next car that pulled out of the driveway down the street, and they were all in cahoots to kidnap me and do all kinds of terrible things. I was terrified a lot of the time and very creative, so I was good at creating worst case scenarios for myself. And so I grew up with a lot of fear. And this was sort of my first experience to start soothing my nervous system and my inner thinking toward positive stories. What if the best possible thing could go on? Like, what if that person in that van is rushing down the street to break and reach out and tell me they have an extra cupcake and they'd like me to eat it. And it's not poisoned or anything. It's just a gift from the universe. Like, literally mind-bending, changing, body-changing evolution starts with Louise Hay. Thank you, Louise. And it's safe. It's not super guru-y. It's not super, I'm going to change your whole life. Just give me $20. Like, it's safe. It's an example of the world being safe. It's safe to listen to Louise Hay. Absolutely. So that starts me down a path. I find out about Brené Brown and I start reading her books in terms of leadership style. And I do a lot of the work I do because of my work, and then it later impacts my personal development and relationships. But my intro is how is this going to help me make more money in my business? Or how could I be a better boss and show up better for my employees? How could I be a better human in the world of commerce? That's my entry point for a lot of things. I've learned that over time. But one thing I learned from Brené Brown is that middle age is its stage of development. And okay, like preschool, like middle school, like adolescence, like young adulthood, like college, right? And that helps me place myself in a space of learning in life without having it to be in a specific classroom. And it helps me understand that I am changing and having more agency in how I change. I'm able to reflect on my past in new ways, and I'm going to receive new tools and new teachers so that I can create an adult life that I really love living. And around that same time, I meet Elizabeth D'Alto online. And I'm exposed to her podcast through a friend, and miraculously get signed up for something that I didn't pay for. And I get exposed to this podcast where Elizabeth D'Alto is interviewing these 15, 20, 25 women that are doing incredible work, have done a lot of healing, and are showing up in lives that they love living. And it builds a community for me. So I'm not alone in the world in my way of seeing things in a new way. It's not just me and Louise Hay, my new grandmother. There's this community of people talking about these things, living out the benefits and consequences of these choices, and growing in a way that I am growing. And so I have some community around me. And I'm starting to feel less fear about the world. And I'm feeling more self-confidence and more agency in developing my day-to-day life in the way that I want to. And it helps me do my business differently and show up better for my employees and all of those things. I'm enjoying myself more. And like my pen and notebook, I am again given some tools that I need just as or just before I need them. Because in 2011, I have a full-on super chick showdown. I received a letter from the IRS that I'm being audited. And because, as I said, a lot of the work that I do, the entry point is commercial space. I almost feel like, as opposed to getting cancer, I got audited by the IRS. I don't know, and I don't need to create any false equivalence. But it was a giant showdown for me. It was me getting the opportunity to face, at that time, my biggest fear. Poverty, financial consequence, breaking rules, David and Goliath as far as small business, Cecelia, and the United States IRS. And of course, this entry point is sort of safe. I didn't really do anything wrong. In 2011, there was a new way of reporting with credit card systems, sending you a 1099. And apparently, a bunch of businesses were audited because there was some discrepancy between how you were being shown the money that was coming in from your credit card company, and then how you were reporting your sales, because you pull sales tax out of your sales. And so those two amounts were looking different. And the difference was sales tax. But the IRS, while they made a change in how they were receiving information, didn't necessarily figure out all the things that would be impacted before they sent out their audit letters. Lots of automation in that process, right? One could say this is the beginning of a healing journey for me. So here's what I have. An accountant I really like, who I trust, who's really busy. What I can control is that I answer her questions and I give her all the information that I have. What I can't control is what are the questions she's asking me? And what is she not seeing that I'm not aware of, as far as I think I've shown her everything and there's some things she's not seeing. And tax-wise, this would be very different now because most people use QuickBooks, where a lot of things are being sent in electronically without showing papers or having conversations. But I'm sure that leads to other issues. Anyway, back to my story. So we start the audit process. I'm scared out of my mind. I buy some like cute Kate Spade gold files to get everything organized to show, because if I'm going to be looking at a lot of paperwork, I want it to be cute. I wear my like nautical dress because to me it's sort of conservative but responsible, and I like stripes. And I go to the IRS office for the meeting that they've required. And it's like walking into a modern version of Mordor. Tolkien references throughout my life, yes. I quoted him at my wedding, too. And we'll call my person dedicated to my case Joe. And just call him Joe. That's not his name. He worked in Mordor. He did wear cute shirts. His mom had been in retail. Pretty sure there were some mom issues there. You know, I'm starting to become aware of sometimes in our life experiences, there's other like bigger energetic things getting worked out for the universe that aren't always obvious in the forms. So it's a really tough one. And I get to a point with my accountant, and she says, I can take you no further on this journey to Mordor, the ring. You need an attorney. What? So I'm freaking out that I have to get an attorney. She says, this is who you're going to call. Thank you. I'm given who I need. I'm not doing the research myself. I'm trusting. Guess what his name is? Sam. So Sam helps me take the ring into Mordor, as he did Frodo. I'm curious if you have a Sam in your life, or you've ever been a Sam. Thank God for Sam. My first conversation with him, I'm sobbing, crying, sobbing. I can barely speak. And the only reason I can occasionally come out and enunciate words is because it's finance and in business, and I'm good at that. Except this to me is telling me I've just failed my most important exam. And I'm a really good student. And I broke some rules on the way. And I'm a rule follower. And I might go to jail and will never have $1 to like feed myself for the rest of my life. Is the fear I'm experiencing. It's primal, and it has taken over my body, and I am sobbing and devastated. And Sam listens to me, this lawyer, sob and sob and sob and sob, and occasionally I can answer a question here or there. And then in the end, he says, Cecelia, I'm going to get you through this. You're going to be fine. And we're going to take this one step at a time. And I'm here to help. Okay. Hang up the phone. Devastated. But Sam's going to help me. How will I ever pay for Sam? How will I ever pay that money that they think I'm making that I'm not even making? And there was a shortcut, like in the game of Candyland, where one of the really early meetings, my tax person's there, and the person handling my case with IRS is there. My tax person says, "What's the dollar amount we pay you where we don't have to go through the audit at all?" And he says, this. And I'm like, what? Could never pay that much money. So here we go through the audit. Guess how much the final bill was in the end? That amount. So had I been a baller, I would have been like, oh, here's the fast track. Money's going to be the same anyway. Boom, let's just save the 2 years of time and all the pain and suffering. But I didn't know that at the time. I needed to go through all the steps. So Sam, the attorney, gives me his junior attorney, who's incredible, but less expensive. That, loves a good suit, has some fashion sense to him. So we're a good match. He thinks it's weird that I have crystals in my box. I'm like, anything that can make this go better. If those crystals aren't hurting anybody, I'm pretty sure they're helping me. Can I please get through this audit? Oh, can I survive this is my question. It's not the language I use at the time, but can I survive this? And what can I learn from it is the question that I now get to look back. And at that time, I find The Good Wife is on TV, and it's like streaming is kind of new, but I can at least like on demand watch the show. I don't have to wait for it to be on live. So there's lots of seasons, and I can just dive into this world of justice. Some things are unjust, some things are just. Some things are out of your control. Sometimes you find the little nugget that like solves everything and makes things go away. I'm living on the show. Thank God for Juliana Margulies, who is now literally one of my guides. Her character in The Good Wife, and then her character later in the morning show. She has a neutral tone. She takes things one step at a time. She has David and Goliath moments at work. She has some people who are unjustly in process, victims of the system. She sometimes really saves people. She sometimes gets people off who are guilty. She sometimes can't get people off even though they're innocent. I mean, it's just all the ins and outs of it, but it helps normalize the justice system and legality and having a lawyer. And in some ways it's kind of fancy, and that's my like, I want to be fancy. So I'm kind of fancy that I have this lawyer. Let's see how much money I make. I can pay this lawyer. So there is a part of this process that is also showing me my strength, where I go to in me, and I'm like, boom, confidence, like a Jay-Z level player, Beyonce level money, energy, like the running shit baller boss, right? That part is in me, despite the like inner child that is in war, is what it feels like. I am so scared. And so also during this time, like not enough meditations and energy healers in the world to help me with this, right? But I use the ones I got. I start using them more. I develop a game called Real Life Bingo, and and it starts because of The Good Wife. So I'm kind of obsessed with the detective in The Good Wife, as were many people. It was a great character. And I'm talking about the show with some workmates of my husband's one day at a picnic. And one of the women who works in the costume shop is actually going to school to become that type of detective. And so on the side works within like a forensics thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. So then she's telling me about the like real life stories there, and I'm fascinated. And then I'm in my shop in the boutique, not too long after that, and this woman comes in. She's a new client. She totally reminds me of my best friend from elementary school, T. And we start talking, and I'm helping her get dressed, and she's a little fabulous, and a little mousy, and I ask her what she does. That's her job. She is one of those detectives for the DA's office. And I'm like, real life bingo. Oh my gosh, that's 3, ding, ding, ding. Like this, my infatuation with this show, and then the real life stories of this woman at the picnic, and now you. And I'm like, I'm going to start following these real life bingos. Like, I'm playing with the universe, and I'm allowing what in my language now is these stories to develop, and I can actually have a really good time. And maybe the world isn't so dangerous after all. Maybe it's a little more fun than I realized. And then the woman tells me the type of cases she works on. And they have to do with children, and they're devastated. And while I'm so trying to have the world become a safe space, it rocks me. But horrible things also happen, even to kids. And that's a continued thing, right? Like, have you ever had the experience where something's really hard, and then there's some ease, and you're like, oh, thank God it's over. And then slam, the next thing happens. You're like, because nothing's ever done, right? Like, it's continual process. And how good it'd be like surfing your best possible wave and then literally getting pummeled with the next one. Like, you're good in a moment, you struggle in another one. You struggle in a moment, you get good at another one. Like, we are just in process. I mean, it's like the athletes in the Olympics, like, they're the best in the world and they still have a rough pass or ski breaks, or they miss the bar and fall off, like, even though they don't normally, or they just do that less than others. It doesn't mean perfection, right? So real life bingo becomes a fun game for me, and it's at least a coping mechanism while I'm in this long-term process of what becomes, and I mean, I spoke to a lot of professionals along the path, the worst case scenario for audits. Thank you very much. And then I find Tammy. I get sent to her by a friend who's found her. She does massage. She is starting training as a life coach and needs to get hours logged in her training. So first of all, I have my, inner grandmother. I now have my Shifu, if you will, if you're a Kung Fu Panda fan. I have my coach. I have my trainer for this showdown. I'm given the tool that I need just as I need. And I'm able to explore a new part of my relationship with my husband, which is he's kind and supportive. He doesn't blame me for this, and he is not leaving. I don't have abandonment issues. And so she helps me notice all of these different positives that are coming out of this audit, which to me is so terrifying. I can't do that. And she says, one day you'll be able to say you're grateful for this. And all the different meditations and things I hear, it's like find gratitude, and one day you'll be grateful for the lesson of even the hardest experience. And while I develop the ability to do that around a lot of challenges, I cannot do that about the audit for many years. But with Tammy, I am at least able, with Tammy and Sam, I'm at least, it's like my Gladriel and my Sam. I am at least able to walk through Mordor. And I get out years later, and there isn't a big celebration, and there's not a lot of ease. And my last meeting with the accountant, where they break it down, is devastating. I'm crying, and what I no longer do is have to talk to Joe. and I don't have to go to the IRS building anymore, and I will somehow be able to pay this over time, and it's not accurate or just. That doesn't mean there weren't some inaccuracies that got corrected, but some of it didn't even get addressed. They just decide to agree on something, which is me paying for something that I know that I don't owe, I believe isn't fair. But what ultimately ends up happening is I am able to pay those bills over time. I am able to pay that lawyer, and I am, fast forward many years, in a conversation with my coach, who I still work with on a regular basis. And she says, remember when in the audit you faced your biggest fear? And I said, yes. And she said, look, let's think about some of those tools you developed, because you're using them right now. This is in a big negotiation I had in my work. And I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to face my biggest fear, because now I have a bunch of tools. So I got here. And what an incredible journey that's been. And now I get to describe it as an adventure, because I'm sharing it with you. And I just want to reflect right now, like, if you're in an audit, it's horrible. And sometimes you absolutely do not need someone on the other side, like, well, someday you're going to say you're grateful for this. Like, F right off. But it literally devastated me. And I'm a little giggly while I tell the story years later. And that is because of the incredible development of tools, the precision making that happened with my intuition, and the increase in trust that now exists, and my change in belief that the world is scary at times, but I am safe, and I am capable of exploring it. And I think there's a real value in the noticing of all the juicy parts. I like to kind of call them glittery, sparkly parts that help me have some fun and enjoy my day on another level. Help me realize how incredibly intertwined our energy is, and trust that I will be given what I need to support me in living a life that I love. And if you're on a similar path, or you want to share a story, or you want to hear someone share the kind of nuts and bolts of some big life events and some small ones too, I invite you to hang out with me, and I welcome your comments and questions and sharing, because I'm pretty sure that there are really useful bits of information along the way that are tools for what we need to get to where we're going. And maybe I'll provide one or two of those to you. Maybe you'll provide them to me. But I have my brain. I have a closing that I said something to my producer the other day, and she reflected it back at the end of our sandbox session, which is where we get into conversation about different things here and there. It's our like radio version of this program. And she said, whatever it will be right. And I like to trust in that. So with that, I say ciao for now. I wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful life, full of noticing all the juicy nuggets that come together to support you living life that you love. And I'll see you next time. Cecelia Sterling. Have a wonderful day. Ciao for now.